everybody. Welcome to the Cats and Bolts podcast, episode number 8, Florida's favorite NHL show, where we talk about the Florida Panthers and the Tampa Bay Lightning, Florida's two National Hockey League teams. I am your host, Rod Peterson, and the co-host is Serena Taylor. And as you all know, I would think by now, we're brought to you in part by DraftKings, Beach House Pompano, Baresco, and the Diamond Lab at 364 East Palmetto Road in beautiful downtown Boca Raton. As I said, it's episode number 8. We've got a lot of things to get to, and we've got a very special guest that's going to be joining us right in this spot, Serena, in about 10, 12, 15 minutes time, and that's John Sinclair, former strength and conditioning coach in Edmonton and Toronto, still a strength and conditioning coach, dare I say, yours, and you guys both showed up with your Oiler gear on today. It's not going to be the Edmonton show, but we should point out that both the Lightning and the Panthers' next home game is against the Edmonton Oilers. So you got tingles or what?
I'm always excited when the Oilers come here. We thought about going over to Tampa, but I think we'll just stay here. It's going to be, let's see what happens over the next couple of games, but I don't have a lot of hope, as you know, for the last little bit, but...
Yeah, well, by the way, we have a lot to get to here, but Monday's game when the Oilers visit the Florida Panthers, it is the Panthers' annual Hockey Fights Cancer Night. Just throwing that out there, so wear pink to the rink, and we'll be talking about that a little later on. But we got several topics. I told our gang that we'll bring them in about, as I said, 10, 12 minutes in. We have some topics that we want to talk about here. I'm going to jump right to it because this is what people are talking about in my circle, and that was Connor Bedard came in here. As we... with the Chicago Blackhawks last weekend. As we sit here, the Panthers are on a 5-game winning streak, and they're second in the Atlantic. The Lightning are 6-6-4. We're going to get to the fact that Vazzy's back practicing and how the Lightning have fared without him. But part of the 5-game win streak for the Panthers was the win over Chicago here before a sellout crowd, Panthers crowd. Trying to remember what, I think it ended up 4-3 for Florida. It was a feisty game. A lot of Chicago fans in there. And Matthew Tkachuk was roughing up Connor Bedard. It's going to be a theme maybe for the rest of Connor's career that I love him. You're hard on him. You like him, but you're harder on him than me. So we have a lot to talk about with Connor Bedard here. Scored twice, ended up +1. Put the camera on her, please, Ben, because she doesn't know where to go with this.
Am I hard on him, or am I just a realist and any Regina Pats fan sees
Forget
it
about the
Regina
Pats. That's
but that's why
us.
You see him the way you see him.
No, I see him as a hockey player. Here we go. I knew it, John. I knew it. It's starting already. Just say your piece, and then I'll say mine. And take us through what happened at American Bank Arena the other night. I'm just mean on the ice. But you got a little backup from some people to support your argument on what happened that night.
If I would have come in there and said, Rod, Bedard was a train wreck.
Which you did.
I did not say that. Bill Lindsay said that. If I would have said that, I'd have been public enemy number 1.
You always say that. That wouldn't have been new.
I never called him a train wreck.
Well, not on the microphone. But.
I didn't. I still have never called him a train wreck. Going back again to where my first opinion of him was he was underwhelming. And why? Because everybody's like, he's the greatest. He's the greatest. And the first time I saw him play live, I'm like, he is? I don't know about that. And then he gets benched. But I'm public enemy number 1 because I'm the one that called it out. We all agree he had a better second juniors than he did. Fast forward to the other night, I watch him play, and everybody's talking about how great he's going to be and how much he's going to light up the NHL. And I was like, really? There's a lot missing. So at the first intermission, Bill Lindsay comes in and goes, Bedard is a train wreck. He's a train wreck. And I was like...
defensively, but...
Yes. I go, thank you. Thank you. And then now the excuses are coming out. Well, what do you expect? He's only 18, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I expect what I expected 2 years ago at the World Juniors because everybody was talking about how great he is and how magnificent he is. After the second period, Billy comes out and goes, well, he's still a train wreck. He's had the puck on his stick for 10 seconds and he scored 2 goals.
I take a train wreck like that on my team.
Sure.
Continue.
And of course, there's a lot of reasons, and all of a sudden now everyone's coming out with the excuses. Well, he's only 18. He's going to learn. My point is this. You got to play in the NHL before anybody can actually judge how you're going to play in the NHL. Before he played 1 game, everybody was talking about how he's going to be the next big thing. I never said he wasn't going to be good. I always just said, just like everybody else, give it some time.
Okay. Fair. Are you done on that?
I could never be done, but
Okay, well, I know. So see what we do here, John? You think it is fun. It may not look like it, but it is.
We decided we need to put our GoPro in our living room. we would just have...
Oh, we used to said that years ago. But anyways, that is what it is. Connor did score twice in the game. He was +1. When he was talking about against the Panthers, when he was talking about the defensive train wreck, he was completely unaware at his own end, and that's the thing. He will catch up, I would think, and learn this game, but he wasn't drafted to play defense. I think he was one of the 3 stars. And the game before that in Tampa Bay, he had 2 goals and 2 assists, 4 points in a Chicago win. And as we sit here today, 13 points in 13 games. And I did say he was going to be a point-a-game player. I didn't say he was going to be a plus player.
Well, he's like -7 or 8 or something.
Now, but the main thing isn't even about how he played, because we ain't never going to agree on that. It was Matthew Tkachuk coming after him in the second period. I took Scott from the Diamond Lab, our newest sponsor from the Diamond Lab, 364 East Palmetto Road in beautiful downtown Boca, where they proudly serve luxury lab-grown diamonds. Check them out, the Diamond Lab. So it was at the other end from us. So
maybe it was the third period.
So what happened there? Bedard got pasted.
Yeah, Kulikov hammered him into the boards. And like Billy said, he's like, maybe it was a second. He said, you can't cut back in this league like that when you're a small guy like that. He tried to cut back. He didn't really try to cut back, but he got hammered by Kulikov. And it probably looked more aggressive than it was at the time watching it live, but Bedard got up. He always does. He's been hit hard a lot of times, and I'll give him credit. He gets up. He never tries to go after anybody. He's so poised at only 18 years old. But leave it up to Tkachuk. He's got to come in and try to start some shit. He cannot help himself. And I'm like, really? You got Foligno in there defending Bedard. He took 2 double minor for high sticking and roughing, I think it was, or tripping and roughing something. And Bedard's just standing there going, I'll let everybody else sort this, which he should. He didn't come here to fight. But Tkachuk cannot help himself. He just got to...
But that is him. And it always has been him. It's the way that he plays. He's also, incidentally, about a point-a-game player. So I had a poll up on our Twitter account and Instagram. Give us a follow, by the way, at Cats and Bolts on Twitter and Instagram. Do you have a problem with Matthew Tkachuk roughing up Connor Bedard in the game? And over 80% said no, they didn't. And some of those were Chicago staff, because it's literally a welcome to the NHL thing. I don't like it. Tkachuk's 25, Connor's 18, and it's nobody likes a bully. But if you can look in the mirror as Matthew Tkachuk and come after the top rookie in the league because for what, then I don't think he care. He don't care what we think.
Well, it's not that he did anything dirty.
No, it was a flyby even. He barely even.
It was just kind of, it was just a mucking up thing, but it was typical Tkachuk. And like Phil says, my dad, he's like, he doesn't pick on bigger guys because he gets a shit beat out of him. Or he turtles in any event.
Yeah.
But he picks on the smaller guys. He'll pick on anybody as long as he can go up behind them and put his arm around their neck. He knew Bedard wasn't going to do anything, but he was just... Yeah. It was nothing.
Well, it really wasn't anything. But it certainly got a lot of people talking. I couldn't believe anything that happens in the NHL gets a lot of people talking, but more so on that than I would have thought. But Serena said, and I don't think you mind me saying, you're like, I don't want to get all the Panthers fans mad at me for what you say about Tkachuk, but they knew what they were getting. He's still the same guy here that he was in Calgary.
But they didn't know what type of player he was in Calgary.
He's what the Panthers knew what they were getting, not the fans.
Yeah, I mean, as an Oiler fan, I'll never be a fan of Tkachuk. It's just, that goes deep. But they're getting the player probably more out of him than they originally thought they were going to when they first picked him up, in my opinion.
There's no doubt about it. Well, somebody said the most iconic goal in Panthers history and the most iconic photo is of that goal. Tkachuk on his knees celebrating the overtime winner. That's pretty cool, man. And I get that the Panthers fans love him. He's kind of that thing that if he's on your team, you love him, and if he's not, you hate him. Marchand is a good example. That kind of player, I would say.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. But man, a lot of people hate Marchand. I don't actually mind him unless he does something stupid, which I'm not a fan of.
I think a lot of people hate Matthew Tkachuk too. And in both cases, the two players don't care. So before we bring in John Sinclair, and I should mention, my name's Rod Peterson. Do you want to, who was it that said to you, that guy never says his name on there with you?
I'm trying to remember who that was. Somebody commented and they're like, who's that guy you're on there with? How did you get hooked up with that? Mm-hmm. He decides, I'm like, that's right. He thinks everybody knows who he is.
Stop it. I said that, not her. I've been in the business 35 years. I assume some people know, and then I realize I'm in a new place. Nobody knows. So I'm Rod, that's Serena, but I guess you all know Serena. Before we bring in Johnny Sinclair, the former strength and conditioning coach in Edmonton and Toronto, because I'm just going to turn it over to you two. I think you got a lot to talk about. I do want to talk about the Panthers and the Lightning, just the most recent thing. And let's for the Lightning fans, because you people said you wanted more Lightning talk on this show, and I get it. The Lightning are 6-6-4 as we sit here today. They're coming off getting spanked in St. Louis 5-0, but it was not a 5-0 game at all. The shots were even. The empty net goal came when they pulled a goal with 4 minutes to go, and it was 3-0. Empty netter made it 4-0. They put JoJo back in and they scored it and made him 5-0. So it looked terrible. But they're fifth in the Atlantic, and they're just holding the fort till Vasilevsky comes back. I didn't think they would have 6 wins at this point without Vasilevsky. So I don't think they can be too upset.
You know what, though? I feel like watching Tampa, they're so skilled. They're one of the most skilled teams.
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. Every time you watch any of them get the puck, you know when a guy like Kucherov or Sergachev gets the puck, they're not going to make a mistake. And that's kind of how I feel about Edmonton. That's why I'm not worried about Edmonton, is because they have the skill. So Tampa has, being 500, they have nothing to stress about. They're just such a skilled team. I'm not saying that when Vasilevsky comes back, they're going to all of a sudden ramp up and be this incredible, unstoppable team. I don't think we're going to see much of a change. It's just going to be what it will be.
I think a lot of people thought it would be calamitous without Andrei Vasilevsky, and it hasn't been. And that's a kudo, I think, to coaching and to the players, to adhering to what the coach is asking them to do, John Cooper, which he said, by the way, he would be disappointed, John Cooper, if Vasilevsky isn't back in their net starting by December 1st. And I think that's ahead of schedule. And to the Panthers, I've been getting this a lot. I've been on a lot of shows lately. They're saying, what's with these Panthers? They've won 5 in a row. They're 10-4-1, second in the Atlantic. Coming off a 5-3 win at San Jose. They're on a 3-game trip out west right now. And it's a pretty easy answer to me. You've been at a lot of games. I've been at every game. They don't panic. They're a veteran team. Paul Murray said it last week. He goes, there's a belief in our game. They believe they're going to come back. They believe in each other. And I think we can all see that in the games.
Well, I think the biggest thing for them is that they've learned how to play without Montour, without Ekblad, which, by the way, some of those guys have been skating already. So they're not far coming back. But that was their biggest crutch, was that they were like 28th in the league getting the puck out of their own end. And they seem to have figured that out, minus their top defensemen. So it's kind of like the same thing with Vasilevsky. When those guys come back, it's definitely going to change the dynamic of the team. But it's hard to beat it when they've won their last 5 straight. Mm-hmm.
5 wins in a row, as you say. You can't redline all year long. They're obviously happy with their game. They're going to hit their dips, though. That happens to every team, right?
Absolutely. What's happening to the Panthers right now is what happened to them in the last couple months of the season last year, where they started to hit that stride and get that confidence. That's where they're at already. It doesn't last forever, but I think they're in a good place with that.
Well, the gentleman that were in here just before us, Ben, what's the name of that podcast before us? What is it?
It's called the Cuddy Gavi Show.
The Cuddy Gavi Show?
Yep. They
were like, how the Panthers drawn? How the Panthers drawn? And we're like, we're selling out every game. You know, in which Tampa Bay has sold out every game for years, but it's new for the Panthers the last couple of years, so everybody's pretty turned on. I know that you will get to this with John Sinclair, but I just want to ask you, while it's just you and me, your team's the Oilers, believe it or not. Can you tell? Their head coach was fired, Jay Woodcroft, and I want to know your thoughts on that.
It's just one of those things that has to happen. They tried getting rid of a goaltender. That wasn't necessarily getting it. And I think we all knew that was the next step. Really, it was the only step. What else were they going to do? And like I said, when Jay Woodcroft came in, everybody was like, who is this guy? What is going to happen here? And look at what he did. You know, like you were talking about him leaving the Oilers as the highest winning coach of all time that left.
Yeah.
But that's part of it. It's a business. I know you don't like that. You feel like coaches get fired so willy-nilly, but it's a business. If you have an employee that's not pulling their weight and doing their job, they have to go. But like I said, you don't see Oilers fans like Flames fans. Let's burn the city down. Death to Daryl Sutter, blah, blah, blah. We weren't like that. It was like, hey, Jay Woodcroft did some good stuff. We wish him well. Let's bring in the new guy. Let's go.
I just think it was a little soon. But the Oilers didn't want to fire him. Nobody wants to fire anybody, right? So whether it works out or not, we're going to find out. Just ahead of a break, and we'll bring in John Sinclair, we want to tell you that we're brought to you in part by DraftKings. Get in on the game day greatness now, everybody. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the promo code THPN. We'll have it up on the screen in a second. There it is. Stands for the Hockey Podcast Network, THPN. New customers can score $200 instantly in bonus bets when you bet 5 on the NHL. That's code THPN. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the National Football League. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. A quick pause. John Sinclair in next on Cats and Bolts. All right, Cats and Bolts continues, everybody. And just want to tell you before we introduce you to our guest of the week, we're brought to you in part by Beach House Pompano. Scenic rooftop restaurant on the shores of Pompano Beach and Beresco. Right across the street, a tropical outpost serving only the freshest tacos and lush jungle vibes, 225 North Pompano Beach Boulevard. Serena Taylor, I'm going to turn it over to you. John Sinclair is your guy. What do people need to know about him?
John, I love this guy. As soon as I saw John at an Oiler game, so this is how John and I met. Last year, I guess, when Edmonton was here, the kids that I took to the game were like, is that Mike Smith? Because John's hair is like hanging out of his hat. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's not. But so anyway, one of the boys ended up sitting with him. And so then I went and sat with John. I'm like, this guy's wearing an Oilers hat. He's got to be legit. And he's like, oh, yeah, man, I'm originally from Saskatchewan. I'm like, oh, me too. He's like, yeah, my wife is from Saskatchewan. I'm like, this is great. So, yeah, it just filled me in on his background. And thanks for coming in, John.
Yeah, it's my pleasure being here. Thanks for having me.
I love this so much. So we both love fitness. John is a strength and conditioning coach. We nerd out on this stuff. In John's garage, he's got all this really cool stuff. So you guys are in the area, you have to work out with him. But talk a little bit about, I love to talk about the conditioning of the athletes nowadays versus what it was even 20 years ago. When we had Jovanovski on here, we started talking about this, and I was like, how different is it? You know, he's like, oh, they used to tell us just have a Gatorade and get back out there. You know, it's just so different. But from a strength and conditioning side, just talk to us a little bit about the importance of it for young players transitioning up there.
Yeah, I've been a strength coach now I've been a certified strength coach for 20 years, but been coaching and involved in hockey for 25. I grew up in small town Saskatchewan, like you guys, and so our strength and conditioning growing up was just go to the rink and just play as much as you can and have a great time doing it, right? And so what we've learned over the years, and as sports science has evolved quite a bit even in the last 20 years, is that we're looking now at preparing athletes a lot different than we did, you know, trying to make them just better hockey players. Now we realize the role of getting kids faster, stronger, and mainly what I find is lacking today is that we're moving too far into structured exercise and structured programming, and we've forgotten about all the value that imaginative play plays in our long-term development. And so when we have little kids, we spend less time giving them freedom to go learn how to play games, how to make up games, and how to get, you know, more motor skills from doing lots of different sports. When we were growing up, you didn't just play hockey, right? You played everything. Why? Because we grew up in a town of only a couple hundred people, and in order to put a team out there, every kid had to play, right? And so you got good at playing all these sports. And then what it gave me the opportunity to now go in and study sport in school. So I went to the University of Alberta, studied physical education, got my degree in sport performance, which was essentially strength and conditioning, exercise physiology, athletic therapy, and I kind of cut my teeth in the athletic therapy world. And what we started learning about performance from that standpoint was that now it was starting to become a little bit more structured from a strength and conditioning standpoint. And so I evolved from going from athletic therapy into strength and conditioning, and I did a bit of physical therapy, worked at a physical therapy clinic, and my first real job in hockey was working as an assistant athletic trainer for the University of Alberta Golden Bears, which is who I wanted to play hockey for, but I wasn't good enough to crack that lineup. And so that's where I started learning a little bit more about all the roles of strength and conditioning. And my original mentor was Pete Friesen, who was a long-term strength coach and athletic therapist for the Carolina Hurricanes. So before he went to Carolina, he was at the University of Alberta, Prince Albert guy, who started at the U of S and then ended up going to U of A, and then Hartford dragged him out of the U of A, and then they ended up going to Carolina. But he was my first mentor, and that was one of the people who really started turning my crank a little bit on what strength and conditioning for hockey means and how to blend strength and conditioning with athletic therapy so that you can keep guys resilient, so you can make sure that they are in top physical condition, but also doing enough recovery that you're not overdoing it with them. And so now, over the course of the last 20 years, it's been this big spectrum of, well, how much speed work do we do? How much endurance work do we do? How much power work do we do? And there's great strength and conditioning coaches all over the world that are really blending the science in with the application. And so there's a big disconnect between what we're doing with youth and what we're doing with pros. We're trying to get what we're doing with the pros down to the youth, and it's a bit of a disconnect. And so we're kind of trying to educate people through the weeds of it, is how to blend it all together in more of a long-term athletic development model. And that's what I focus on now, is working with high school athletes and youth to try and get them to that level of college and help them in their overall development.
Would you have thought, Rod, that there was that much involved behind the scenes?
Well, I've worked in the industry for a long time. So I've seen it. So, yeah.
But the whole science behind it is just incredible.
30 years ago, I would not have thought this was possible. But looking the way it's come and the athletes now, and it's just, I'm interested because it's not all one size fits all for all the players, right? Because not everybody is the same.
Not absolutely. And
right.
so, like, when I was
how do you differentiate what a Connor McDavid needs versus a Matthew Tkachuk or whatever?
Yeah, and back in, when was the lockout?
2005.
05? Yeah. So that year I was with the Edmonton Roadrunners, and I was the only one aware that I was doing this. I'm sure there were lots of coaches doing this at the time, but we had different training programs for different athletes on the team. So rather than us all doing hockey player programs, like a first-line defenseman had a different requirement than a fourth-line forward. So a fourth-line forward, they need to get in there, be explosive, muck it up, get off the ice. So their energy requirement was different from a first-line defenseman. So a lot of the way we looked at energy system development and how long somebody's on the ice and how much energy they're using, it's a different game than for somebody on the fourth line. So we just started to realize that where that was taking place was, some of the guys were having a harder time recovering than others, right? You're doing more work, you're getting involved in things a little bit differently. So your requirements are different. Your nutrition requirements are different. Your electrolyte requirement is different. You're going to lose more weight just from sweating more, right? So we started looking at that. And then as it comes to development, I think what we did is we tried to develop hockey players based on position instead of based on their motor skill and athleticism. And so what started happening is we started looking at, well, let's make them better hockey players, but we forgot that, well, there's a lot of unique skills that happen in hockey that don't happen in other sports. If you move an athlete into hockey and only focus on hockey, they're losing a lot of athletic development that they could have prior to going to hockey. So that's what we're trying to balance out now, is how do I take a single sport athlete where we know they don't have quite as much success in their long-term development, they're more prone to injury. How do we get them to and teach them how to do more motor skills with different tasks, i.e. play different sports, but do it in a way that, the parents can't necessarily take their kid to 3 or 4 different sports. For us, it was just, you just walked across the road. You're at the ball diamond, right? And then you walked across another road and you're at the arena. So now what I focus on doing is teaching more athletic skills that they might not get in their sport because they're so solely focused on a singular sport.
I love that. That is so true, because we do talk about that every once in a while on this show, because we've had several guests. And I mean, obviously, I'm a firm believer of playing other sports. Like kids here, if they get a week off a year of playing hockey, it's crazy to me. They just play hockey year round. I'm like, why? Why aren't you guys expanding your horizons and doing other things? Sometimes they don't want to, like the kids don't want to, but I can't relate to that, because as kids, we wanted to do everything.
True. I know by the end of the hockey season, I was like, get these skates off me. I can't wait to get my ball glove. You're like, when is it going to finish
And
snowing?
we loved hockey.
And then at the end of the ball season, you're like, oh man, I can't wait to get my skates on. When's it going to snow? When's it going to get cold enough so we got ice, right? And so those are the challenges that we have now, is that, down here in South Florida, it was like really shocking to me that, athletes only played one sport. But you can. Like, I work with a lot of tennis players now. Well, you can play that 365 days a year, right? But you wouldn't be able to do that in Saskatchewan. So it's a bit of a challenge. The environment, as we say, dictates behavior, right? So if you're in an environment where everybody's doing that and everyone's only taking kids to structured practices, that's what you do. And so now we have to offset that a little bit and help guide the parents and guide the kids into managing the amount of physical, mental, emotional, social stress that comes from only doing one thing, and try to give them a different perspective of how do we enhance their athleticism and their long-term athletic development so that we can get the most out of their life in sport, right? Because there's life after sport, but if they want to go from high school to college to pro, there's a lot of change that's going to happen in them, not only just physiologically, but psychologically, that they have to get through. So that's tough to do when you're only solely focused on a singular thing.
So let me ask you, in the time we have left, we'll talk about with both of you about the Oilers coming here this weekend, Tampa Saturday and Monday Sunrise, and your expectations. But you wear your Oiler gear around here. What kind of what reaction do you get from people around here?
Yeah, so in my training studio, which is in my garage now, I have my Oiler hockey bag there, and I leave it up there. And so when new people come in, I'm like, yeah, hockey fan and Oiler fan. Who's that?
Oh,
so
really?
A lot of cases, a lot of people I know don't know who the Edmonton Oilers are. So I'm proud to display that I'm a big Oiler fan, always have been since, we were really little. So I grew up in the days of Gretzky and Curry and Coffey. And so, and then now having the luxury to be able to work with some of those guys and have so many friends in it, and have all my friends are back in Edmonton. So it's always a talking point. So it's interesting when I get to bring up hockey to people in South Florida and then talk about the Oilers and my experience being a fan, and then getting an opportunity to work with some of the players that went through that organization and still have a bit of a connection with the Oilers. It's pretty cool to chat about it.
What I think is so cool is when I come train with you and we talk about the different players and the different this and that, you have the way you look at these players is all how they are athletically. You're like, oh man, this guy was the toughest guy I ever trained, or this guy was really good at blah, blah, blah. Because that's how you correlate these guys, because that's your connection.
Yeah.
It's important to have that knowledge. And a lot of people, like, I don't think, like I just said to Rod, like, would you have realized there was this much involved? Like, you knew every single player and what they needed from you. That's important.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a strength coach, your job is to do a needs analysis of not only what is required in the sport, which is really important. A lot of people don't understand what goes into hockey. It is by far, without a doubt, the hardest sport in the world to play. It requires the most skill of any other sport in the world to play. And so the challenge now is to help fans understand the complexities of just how do you stand up on ice, and then how do you go way faster than you can go on the ground, right? And then how do you handle an object that has to move an object in a chaotic environment with a surrounding that kind of corrals that chaos, and then have really complex rules around it. And so when we explain the game to folks that don't really know it, what I really love and appreciate is those subtle little complexities that fans don't necessarily pick up, that I get an opportunity to chat with them about, and they're like really mesmerized by everything you have to know about the game of hockey. So when we see, you know, a new coach like Chris Knobloch come in, who was also a University of Alberta Golden Bear, when you see someone like him come in, who was a great player, and I watched the game the other night against the Islanders, and he just kind of sat back and watched what was going on and watched how everything kind of developed. And you can tell that he's taking an inventory of what all these players are doing, what do they do well, right? And then how do you maximize their opportunity? And that's what you have to do as a strength coach as well. What do these guys do really well? What is it that their movement requires? What is it that I can do to help facilitate a little bit of athleticism or recovery or strength or power or whatever it might be to bring out the best version of themselves when they get there on game day?
That's kind of funny, and we don't go much longer than what we've done here. Got 5 minutes left, but did you see what the Oilers said after the game when they beat the Islanders 4-1?
No.
And, well, McDavid said, because he knew Knobloch. Knobloch coached him in junior, and McDavid goes, yeah, Chris said he didn't have much time in a morning skate to change much, get into system, so just go play. Yeah. And I was like, there's probably a little more to it than that. What do you think that speech was before his first game? Do you think it was as simple as go be yourself, guys, or what do you think he did?
I think, you know, in a lot of cases, when you're working with a professional athlete, they know what's required of them, right? Like, there's no coach that's going to help you score more goals. There's no coach that's going to help you prevent more goals. I think coaching is putting people in a position to be successful, right? Allowing them to be their authentic selves so that they can go out and do what's best for their team. And in most cases, what we find is that if we overcoach or we try to do too much, then that pulls away from that authenticity of what that athlete does well, or how that athlete can basically react when they need to react when they shouldn't be thinking, right? And so, you know, you brought up Connor Bedard as an example of a kid who's coming into a league where his talent gave him a lot of passes in the Western Hockey League because he was so much talented than everybody else. So you don't have to learn the game quite as well as when you come to the NHL, and everybody's IQ is so much higher. That narrows the gap in talent. And so I think if I was Chris Knobloch and I was talking to the guys, it would be the exact same thing. Go out there, you know, to score goals, right? Make those plays happen. Be responsible. Here's a couple things to think of. Stay on the defensive side of the puck. There's one thing you have to say. Just wherever you are on the ice, even in the offensive zone, stay on the defensive side of the puck. The puck's going to come out to you, and you're going to be in a scoring alley. So there's little things like that I think the players resonate with, and you hear it in the locker room. Like, guys know what they need to be doing, you know, and it's just a shame that when you get in a slump, and what I think the stat that came up the other night was Oilers were top 3 in every offensive scoring opportunity, but 26th
in scoring.
26th in the league in scoring, right?
Right.
They had the highest opportunities, the highest shots, but they're not putting the puck in the net, and they had some of the lowest goals against. So what do? That's hard on a player because they know that, listen, we didn't score. We didn't prevent them from scoring, and now a guy lost his job. That's hard on those guys, right?
How do you blame the coach for that? I'm sorry, Serena, do you want to jump in?
No,
now?
go ahead. No.
How do you blame the coach for that? I said it was too soon.
Yeah.
But she thought a change had to be made. I shouldn't speak for you. Did I ask you? Well, I did earlier, I guess, if you thought it was too soon.
Something had to happen. I mean, the team as talented as the Oilers, there's a disconnect somewhere, right? Yep. It's like, can't get rid of the players.
Yeah, and I think there's, you know, the psychology of sport is so fascinating, isn't it?
Agreed.
Like, we think in strength and conditioning it's all about physiology, but really it falls under the umbrella of psychology. So if you get in a slump, things aren't going well, people are upset, it's really hard to make change, right? And so it's really hard to turn things around. You have, you know, that starts from the top down. Right?
Agreed, yeah.
And so it's really difficult to do that with a group that is underperforming or they know they're underperforming. And if you're not really great at teaching, which I'm not saying Jay Woodcroft was not good at teaching, you have to be even that much better at teaching to bring them out of that. If they believe that it's a oh, we're doing something schematically that is too confusing and we're overcoaching it, right? That's the challenge, is when you have a team that maybe thought they had a chance to win the Stanley Cup last year, and then everyone's talking about they're going to win the Stanley Cup this year, and then you try to do so much because you want to win the Stanley Cup. Maybe that puts them in a position where some guys were confused, overcoached, didn't really know what it was that they should be doing when they should be doing it. I don't know. I haven't watched enough of the games to really analyze it, and I'm not near at the level that those coaches are to understand what should be doing, but you could see it in their faces that it was not a happy place to be. So I think they get a couple wins and they start feeling like themselves again. And
need to be
like
happy.
You say, like, the puck's going to start going in. If you're first in all those statistical places and you have that much talent, they're going to start scoring.
You're a witness, Serena. I don't want him to go without you saying, I meant to ask him this. Do you have anything else?
I could talk to him all day about different things.
We have time for one more.
Fitness related, but I guess, yeah, just kind of on that same subject. What do you see happening with the Oilers and when they come in here or come into Tampa on Saturday and here on Monday?
I think they're going to they need to attack, right? And so both Tampa Bay and Florida are such good defensive teams, and they take care of their own end, that you won't be able to sit back on them. You're going to have to attack. And if they do that, I think they have a really good chance of getting a little bit of a streak going here. You do the math on it, even though they're, 4-9-1. They have an opportunity. You know, the easiest way to look at it is you win 2 out of their next 3 games, and you're right back in it. And if you keep that up, of winning 2 out of your next 3 games or 3 out of your next 4 games, then you just keep that mentality going. By the end of the season, you've finished at .650 winning percentage. So they've got a real good chance of putting that together, because with the firepower and the talent that they have on that team, they can win 3 out of every 4 games they play.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, this has been fun, John. I hope you had as much fun as we did.
Always.
Oh, good.
Come back anytime.
All right. Well, we'll see you at the games.
Yes, you will.
All right, everybody. It's Hockey Fights Cancer Night for the Panthers Monday when the Oilers are here. And ahead of that, the Oilers are at Tampa Bay. We got a special guest coming up from the Panthers alumni next week. Follow our social media channels and you'll find out who it is. Cats and Bolts on Twitter and Facebook. Thanks to the Podcast Junkies crew, Ben and company, Travis and Christian. And we'll see you next week here on the Cats and Bolts podcast.